Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we're going to go over the psychic phase for the Tyranids. This is by far the part that has given the biggest glow up in the new Tyranid Codex. Many of our Psykers have gotten significantly powerful, as well as just the way we use our psychic powers has become much more powerful, and Tyranids have now become a force to be reckoned with, already more than they were in the psychic phase, if not the best army in the psychic phase. So today we'll dive into all the psychic powers. We'll dabble a little bit on each of these Psykers, some combos and some almost auto-include units you have to use in your Tyranid army going with the 9th edition Codex. So if that all sounds good to you, do hit that little like button. It helps out our channel. And if you want to stay up to date on all of our content here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios, do also click that little subscribe button. So now with all that out of the way, let's dive into today's video. So an overview, like I said, today we're going to go over all of the psychic powers. We'll go over the psychic units briefly on all of them. We'll do some relics, warlord traits, synaptic imperatives, some extra little goodies that we can use to buff our psychic phase. There's a few stratagems in there as well, and again we'll top it off with some combos that I think are very important here for the Tyranids coming up. So the psychic powers, we have 6 of them, as well as Smite, and we have our one for each Hive fleet specifically. So let's touch on the Hive fleet, or the standard ones first, then we'll go in the Hive fleet. So first one, Catalyst, that has received almost no change. The difference is now it can be cast within Synaptic link range. So if you saw our last video, we talked about how Psykers can go from one psychic or one synapse creature to another synapse creature to another synapse creature with certain abilities. Psychic powers specifically, actually all of them, are also done in that same way. So if Catalyst, I want to get all the way over here to this unit of Zoanthropes, the Maleceptor could pass it to the Hive Tyrant, who could pass it to the Tervagon, who could pass it to the Broodlord, who could pass it to the Neurothrope, and then give it to the Zoanthropes. Works like that. Typically it'll just say within Synaptic link range are Witchfires. We'll go over though a bit now, is that it also works the same way. So they either have a straight range from the caster, whoever that is, or you can put it on somebody who is in Synaptic link range. And an enemy can also be in Synaptic link range. So you'll see some of them will say 24-inch range or Synaptic link range, meaning, so the Maleceptor could target somebody within 24 inches of a power, say an enemy, we don't have an enemy here, but target someone within 24 inches, or they can target somebody who is in Synaptic link range of them. So again, pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it, and then if there's an enemy within 12 inches of that end of the chain, or 12 inches, not the full range, 12-inch range of them, they can be targeted by it. Very, very powerful, making sure our powers go off wherever we want them to, really, as long as you keep a strong synaptic link chain. Okay, so back to the actual powers. So Catalyst is a blessing. It is the same thing, Warp Charge 6, 5-up Feel No Pain it grants, though they did make a slight tweak saying it is only a 6-up Feel No Pain for our Titanic units. Understandable, I guess. The Horror, Warp Charge 5, it is a malediction of 24-inch range, or something within Synaptic link range. This grants -2 to leadership and -1 to combat attrition test. Not great, but it is another tactic we have in our tool belt to use leadership to try and get a few extra kills at the end of each turn. Neuroparasite, this is a new one. Warp Charge 7 is a Witchfire of 18-inch range or Synaptic link range. Roll a d6 for each model in the enemy unit. If that die exceeds the toughness characteristic of that unit, they take a mortal wound, max of 6. So this will be great for targeting anything toughness 3 or 4 and lower. If it's a big enough unit, then you can start doing it. Some good amount of mortal wounds. Think of things like the Guardians, Skitarii blobs, other Tyranid players, and you could probably make it work on some Space Marines. So if you're going against some of those units that like to hoard up a little bit more, this will do well. Onslaught, Warp Charge 6. This has not changed at all, thankfully. It's still going to be arguably our best power. It is a blessing within Synaptic link range, and you get to ignore the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons, advancing and firing assault weapons, and it grants you advance and charge. So perfect there for it, and I guarantee you'll be using this every single turn in the Tyranid army. Paroxysm, again, similar, well, same name to what we have, but it has seen a rework. So it's an 18-inch range malediction, or 12-inch with the Synaptic link range. That unit cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend, and they are -1 to wound in melee. So that'll help out, maybe help your Gaunts stay alive, your warriors stay alive even longer. Now, if you use that against a strength 4 attack that is targeting your warriors, they're gonna be wounding on 6s, which is awesome. And Psychic Scream, that one has almost not changed as well. Witchfire of 18 inches, range, or the Synaptic link unit is the closest unit. It does not specify that you need line of sight, though a Witchfire might need the line of sight. I'll have to double check, but I don't think you need line of sight. It just does D3 mortal wounds, and if the enemy unit is a Psyker and the result of the Psychic test was higher than their leadership, they lose 1 random power. So now it's not another roll, it's just if you roll it high enough, then they could lose a power, which is good because we actually have ways to manipulate our die rolls a lot. So watch out, Grey Knight players, and maybe some Eldar players, and Thousand Suns. Yeah. All right, so now we have some Hive Fleet powers. These ones are all very good, I'd have to say. And the nice thing about these is all of your Psykers know this power in addition to the ones they already learn. So now if you are playing in a standard Hive Fleet, all of your Psykers know Smite and this Hive Fleet power in addition to the 2 or 1 or 2 others from the other tree. So your Neurothropes can get up to 5 powers on them with a Relic. So let's go into these powers. Behemoth is a Warp Charge 7 power. It's a blessing within Synaptic link range. That unit gets +1 to wound until the next Psychic phase. Awesome. Kraken, a malediction of 18-inch range or within Synaptic link range. Reroll charge rolls if that unit is part of the charge target. Now, being part of the charge target is key because that means we can multi-assault and we can target 1 unit. Let's say we got a short charge, 2 units within charge, a 2-inch away unit and a 7-inch away unit. Well, maybe we can only see the 2-inch away unit, use it on them. Now we get a reroll if we want to multi-assault both units. So they do specifically say you can multi-assault and still get the reroll. Leviathan, this might be one of the best ones, is a blessing within Synaptic link range. 1 Synapse unit from your army gains access to an additional imperative. If you saw the last video, we talked all about the Synaptic imperatives. It acts as if it is within Synaptic link range. It does not project the aura. So, got your Hive Tyrant here. He's using he's using his own one, let's say that, and then he casts Psychic Power. He wants to use another one. He could use a Turvagun, so now he benefits alone from the Turvagun one in addition to the one that's being casted for the whole turn. A good one, there are some niche cases where that will be very powerful, but for now, we'll just leave it at that. Gorgon, a blessing, again, Synaptic link range, grants a unit 6s to wound in melee, deal a mortal wound to a max of 6 mortal wounds. If you're playing anything really that just does attacks, Bravners, Warriors, Gaunts, Hormagaunts, all of those things that get a lot of attacks in, look for some 6s and do mortal wounds. It just adds on the damage. Can't complain with that one. Jormungandr is a Warp Charge 7 malediction, 18-inch range or Synaptic link range. Melee units that target that enemy unit, so you pick an enemy unit and anything that targets that gains an additional AP in melee. So that's a good one. I don't think it's the best, but it does all right. I wish they had something like their old one that was pretty fun. Kronos, Warp Charge 7, a blessing within Synaptic link range, +1 strength to the unit's range attacks. Now there's a lot of things that could go very well with. The first one that comes to mind is the Exocrine, bringing that big gun up to strength 9 would, or 7, up to strength 7 to 8 would be very, very good. Is it 8 to 9? I don't remember. Oh well, doesn't matter. You could put it on things like, what is it? If you really wanted to play with Devourer Gaunts, you could put that on them. Now they're strength 4, 2 shots apiece. They're almost what they used to be. Wouldn't deal with that too much. If you've got Spine Fist, you want to make them a higher strength. Your Devourers, for some reason, you need to make them strength 6. Won't come up to many cases. But something like really, or your Hive Guard, if you want to make your Hive Guard strength 7 again, could be good. So Kronos 1 will obviously benefit a shooting army. Finally, we have Hydra. It is a malediction of 18 inches or within Synaptic link range. You roll a d6 for each infantry or beast and 3d6 for each monster that is within 3 inches of the unit you target. So you've got a group of Space Marines and they're surrounded by 30 Gaunts, and all of those Gaunts are within 3 inches of them. You would roll 30 dice. For each 5+ you roll, that unit suffers a mortal wound. Max of 6. Out of all of the ways in our Codex that they say max of 6 mortal wounds, I think this has got the one that needs the cap the most, because it has a potential to be astronomically high in the mortal wound dealing, even with just a slightly above average roll. So I really like the Hydra one, the Kraken one. They're all good. The only one I would say on is Jormungandr. Otherwise, I think they're all great. So now let's go over some of the Tyranid Psykers. So first, Hive Tyrant, both flying and foot. They know 2, cast 2, deny 1. Swarmlord is same thing, no 2, cast 2, but he gains a second deny, so that's great. The Turvgon, 1/1/1, typical, and the Broodlord are also 1/1/1. Those are your standard Psykers, nothing crazy with them, but now we get into some of the real brains of the army. The Neurothrope, knows 2, cast 2, and denies 2. They have a built-in rule for +1 to cast all psychic tests, and they have their Warp Siphon ability, which they can grant a unit, including themselves if they want, 3d6, choose 2 for all of their psychic tests taken until the next psychic phase or command phase, because they have to declare that in the command phase. So you could pass it on to the Zoanthropes, you could pass it on to the Maleceptor. You'll probably honestly want to be keeping it on himself a lot of the time just to make sure his powers are so reliable, but you get options with it. These Zoanthropes, they know 1, cast 1, deny 1. So they lose a power, or they lose a cast, which is unfortunate, but they get some bonuses here. So they get +1 to cast, +1 to cast Smite for each model in the unit. So this unit of 3 Zoanthropes here would cast Smite. A basic Warp Charge 5 Smite would go off on a 2, which is also perilous, but still it would be going off. Really, that helps you get up towards the super smiting. We'll talk about that more. They also deal additional mortal wounds +1 for every unit or model in the unit to a max of 3 mortal wounds. So now this unit 3 Zoanthropes, very likely to get smite off and very likely to do on average 5 mortal wounds per smite, which is great. Very good. The Maleceptor, again, we'll talk about it more in depth, but it knows 2, it casts 2, and it denies 1. It has the Psychic Overload ability, which we'll talk on in a second, and it also has Encephalic Diffusion, which is a built-in action it can do, which is Warp Charge 6. This is its old stratagem, is now a psychic action. It's a 6-inch aura of -1 strength of incoming shots. So if you're shooting, anything within 6 inches of it, those guns are -1 strength, which could go a long way. Tricky though, it is an action, so if you're going second, it might not be as useful, and he does have to give up his powers, sort of. But yeah, so now for the big thing, the Psychic Overload. Each time this model successfully manifests a psychic power or completes a psychic action if the result of the psychic test was 7 or more after resolving the psychic power. The closest enemy unit, notice it does not specify line of sight, suffers a number of mortal wounds in the table shown below. So top is based on his bracket profile. So top bracket 3, middle 2, bottom 1. Make perfect sense. Now remember, cast 2. So if he gets 2 powers off on a 7+, which is average, that's 6 mortal wounds. You can pay 1 CP to cast an additional power. That's another mortal wound. And there's more. We'll talk about those in the combos. So let's talk about a few more things before we get into the combos. So Synaptic imperatives and other bonuses. First off, your Neurothrope will almost always be taking the Resonance Barb, which lets him know another power. He gets another +1 to cast. Now he's got base +2 to cast, which is awesome. He also will probably want to take Synaptic Tendrils with him, which is a Warlord trait. This allows him to use his Worp Siphon ability twice per command phase. So now you can put it on himself and any other psychic unit within Synaptic link range, which will go very well with using either on your Zoanthropes or on your Maleceptor. Finally, we do have 2 psychic-related Synaptic imperatives. The Neurothrope, again, his imperative is army-wide +1 to cast, +3 to cast, +1 to deny, watch out, Grey Knights, and 5 up feel no pain versus mortal wounds. Again, watch out, Thousand Suns who deal the mortal wounds in the psychic phase. So that's awesome there. The Maleceptor's one is units can perform psychic actions and psychic powers as normal. So this is different from the Leviathan Void Crown, which I don't even think will be able to be used, but the Void Crown says you can cast 1 psychic power and a psychic action. This is all your psychic powers and a psychic action. So some of your guys could potentially, with stratagem, be doing 3 psychic powers plus an action on the turn that this imperative is active. Speaking of stratagems, we have 2 psychic-related ones that are awesome. First one, Synaptic Channeling, pretty much straight out of our old Blood of Ball book. Until the end of the phase, 1 psyker that you pick knows all of the powers that are on the table. And another one you'll probably use even more, Power of the Hive Mind, let 1 psyker cast an additional psychic power. Very nice. Now we'll go into some of these combos. So first off is the Neurothrope. He is an auto-include unit. You will give him the Resonance Barb for the +1 to cast and then an extra power. You will give him Synaptic Tendril, so he's got 3d6, and you can give that off to somebody else. What you will get is a Neurothrope that has 3d6 +2 to cast all the time. That is his base casting, essentially. 3d6, take the 2 highest, +2. That is an average of 10 on your psychic cast every turn. So pretty much the average of 3d6, take the 2 highest, is 8. It doesn't bump it up too much, but it bumps up the odds from 7 to 8 when you're doing that. So 8 plus the 2 is an average cast of 10, which when all of your powers are 7s, 7 at most, it's pretty easy to get every power off. Plus it makes those powers even harder to deny. Furthermore, what you can do with him is give him all of your really important buffing powers like Onslaught and Catalyst, and you could maybe give him Neuroparasite, or I would probably go with Paroxysm, and then the High Fleet power and Smite. What he can do is he can sit all the way in the back of your army, whether it's behind your Zoanthropes, behind a big monster, behind a wall of gaunts, and as long as he is within Synaptic link range of another unit, it doesn't even have to be like Synaptic link range, so it doesn't have to be a Psyker, it could be a unit of warriors. He can pass those buffs out into the front of your army, and you don't even have to really worry about not getting your high value target powers off. Perfect. I mean, and he's 100 points. All of this is 100 points plus a Warlord trait and Relic. So he's a very much auto-include, and he's probably the king of psychic powers right now. If you really want, with him, his imperative is active. Now he has 3d6 plus 3 Again, take the 2 highest. So he, on average, super smites. So you could super smite, then do catalyst, then do onslaught if you pay the extra CP. So very good. And do no wait, that's someone else. Never mind. So very good. I think if you aren't bringing him with this loadout every game, you are not bringing the most competitive option Tyranids have right now. The next one is to talk about the potential of the Zoanthropes. I mentioned it a little bit. We're going to go very in depth, well, somewhat more in depth here. So let's start with just a basic unit of 3 Zoanthropes. I could see people bringing 4 or 5, probably don't even need 6 anymore. But a unit of 4 or 5 you could bring. Unit of 3 is probably going to be at least one staple in every army. So you give them the Warp Siphon bonus. And if you have the Neurothrope Imperative active, what you get is, on average, you super smite. So your casting potential is 3d6. Pick the 2 highest. So again, we said the average of that is 8. And a unit of 3 gets plus 3 to cast smite, plus the imperative, which equals 12. That is a super smite on average, which means you're doing d6 plus 3 mortal wounds. So roughly 6 to 7 mortal wounds a smite. Again, they can only smite once, but still 6 to 7 mortal wounds per smite. And if you really want to give them Psychic Scream, you could pay the 1 CP to allow them to do an additional d3 mortal wounds when they get smite off, considering that they will automatically, well, they won't because it's only that. They'll pretty much automatically get Psychic Scream off. Now you could bring a unit of 5 and it would basically just add 2 more units so they have a larger footprint. They can daisy chain around the board a little bit bigger. It will cost you an extra 100 points. And you will have a little bit more of a buffer on your how many bonuses you get. Because now if you only bring 3, 1 dies, now you're plus 2 to your mortal wounds, you're plus 2 to casting. It's up to you. I think I'm going to stick with 3 just because they are 50 points apiece. You can do a pretty good job of keeping them in a Venomthrope range, keeping them behind line of sight. They do have the fly keyword and they are relatively durable, being toughness 5 with 4 wounds and a built-in 4 Binvone save. They're relatively durable, especially to small arms fire. The Mortal Wound Machine Gun, as I'm calling him, you've probably seen this combo or some extent to it, but if you haven't, we're going to break this down for you guys. So the Maleceptor, and for the maximum mortal wound potential, we're going to say he's in the Leviathan, but really you can put him in whatever. You're just going to miss out on a couple extra mortal wounds. But for the purpose of this, we have one in Leviathan. What happens is he gets the Warp Siphon bonus. So 3d6, take the 2 highest. You activate the Neurothrope Imperative. This will allow you to get +1 to cast. Then you can use the Hive Nexus Psychic Power, which will allow him to benefit from another imperative. You will choose his own to allow him to cast a psychic action and his powers as normal. I choose to give mine Enraged Reserves for 25 points. It's optional, don't have to. The reason I do this is double his wounds so he can keep up his bracket higher, do those higher 3 damage mortal wounds for longer. But the other thing is that he gets to use a Epic Deed stratagem, I believe it is technically called. Yes, an Epic Deed stratagem for free, once per game with that. It just so happens that the Psychic Channeling Psychic Power to allow him to cast an extra Psychic Power is an Epic Deed strat. So once per game, he can go all out with everything he's got for free, essentially, or 25 points. So what you get is you first can smite. It is 3d6, take the 2 highest, +1. Average of that is 9. So you're not probably going to super smite, but you're going to do d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. Then you're going to Psychic Scream. Again, on average, you are going to get this off every time for another d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. Then if you want to go purely for damage, you'll try and throw in Neuroparasite for I don't know, it depends on what unit you're up, how many mortal wounds. Maybe you start with that one. That's what I would do, is start with Neuroparasite to have the highest chance to do mortal wounds. Nonetheless, as long as you get it off, that's another 3 mortal wounds. Then, because he can still do a psychic action, you can cast Encephalic Diffusion, which gives that -1 strength bubble, but also does 3 mortal wounds. So on average, if you get all these off, which we're just talking about averages, you should, even slightly under average, you will get all these powers off. He is doing 16 mortal wounds plus the Neuroparasite damage, which a 10-man unit could easily be 4, 5, 6 more mortal wounds. So if you want to cap it to see just how many mortal wounds that is physically possible with this guy, you got 6 mortal wounds from Smite. Well, let's say we're getting, all right, physically possible. You have 9 mortal wounds from Smite because you roll a perfect Super Smite. You then go off and do another 6 mortal wounds from Psychic Scream. That is 15 mortal wounds. Then you slap in Neuroparasite for a max of 6 mortal wounds. So you're up to 21 mortal wounds. And then Encephalic Diffusion catches in and you do 24 mortal wounds. The Maleceptor is insane. 24 mortal wounds. If your opponent puts something in the front line, I don't know. The only thing that could survive that really is a big block of like Grey Knight Terminators, because they have the 5-0 to ignore. But I'm talking like a big block of them, not just 5 of them. I'm talking like, 10 of them would survive that, because that's 30 wounds and they have 5-0 to ignore. So they would ignore 8 of them to begin with. So 12 mortal wounds, that still kill 4 Terminators. And that's your most resilient thing you will face against, is Grey Knight, because they always ignore mortal wounds on 5s. So that's the Maleceptor, an insanely efficient unit. Now he could just die for you. He could just, get shot turn 1, and there goes the Maleceptor. But he's less than 200 points, even with enraged reserves. So I think he's almost an auto-include. In a conclusion, I have to say Tyranid Psychic Phase is back. I think as it should be, Shadow in the Warp is supposed to be this almighty shutting down of Psychic, and then the Tyranids are supposed to just be running Synaptic energy and Psychic through each other with the Hive mind. It makes sense that they should be the most powerful Psychic army in the game. Now, with that being said, I do think they resemble that, being the most competitive, and I also think is really fluffy, because being able to pass your powers back and forth totally resembles the way Tyranids are supposed to be playing. So most Tyranid armies, I think, if you're again, play what you want, play how you want to, but if you're looking at a competitive list, I think the Neurothrope, with the loadout I said, is going to be in every single list. These Zoanthropes are going to be in every single list. And then the Maleceptor will be in most lists. I can see people not taking him, especially if you're not in Leviathan. His mortal wound potential will go down a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit. Still, he's going to be very powerful. I think you're going to have to focus on playing the Psychic Phase as the Tyranids. Let that be your #1 excelling factor, and then focus on something else. Make sure your Psychic Phase is solid, and then do melee. Or focus on your Psychic Phase, and then do shooting if you want. Focus on the Psychic Phase, and then play objective based. I don't think that's going to work as well for Tyranids anymore, because our Gaunt's got much more expensive. Horde is not super competitive, though still fun. Yeah, but that's it. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I had to make this one right away because I did such a blunder on the Zoanthropes. I did not give them the credit that they deserved when I first reviewed them. I thought they were, they were good, but after fully diving in and understanding these brain boys, they are awesome. I'm glad they still are my favorite Technically not the Zoanthropes are my favorite. It comes back to the Doom of Malantai from 5th edition, my favorite unit of all of 40k history. He's gone, so the closest thing we have are Zoanthropes, the Neurothrope, and in some ways, the Maleceptor. So that's all I got for you. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our content. And if you want to consider becoming a member to support the growth of this channel even more, then hit that little join button down below and it'll help us out greatly. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the next time. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.